Audiences in Canada, you've enjoyed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we've kind of been most parts of Canada as of the last month or so. So
kind of checking off the provinces as you
Absolutely.
go, as the career continues. Looking back, I mean, we're kind of coming towards the end of touring season for most artists right now, and I'm just wondering if this year has started to take picture for you. Looking back at the year 2024 in your, in your calendar mind, how the year kind of looks to you from this vantage point here at the end of it.
I mean, it's absolutely been probably the biggest touring year for us in that we had our biggest headline shows, and especially like streaming wise and all that, we've had a huge year streaming, and that has helped the live shows. It's been overall our biggest year so far. It's been great, and I'm hoping 25 will be bigger, obviously.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. It just keeps getting bigger.
Absolutely.
What do you think it is? I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if all genres do this. I don't know if hip hop does this. I don't know if rock does this, where we're constantly like doing like a little, self-analysis, kind of checking on the temperature of the water, a state of the union in country music. It's always happening. People are wondering about, the gatekeepers of country wonder about new influences coming in from outside genres, interlopers coming in, the Post Malone explosion obviously gets people chatting a lot about that and the authenticity of that, the veracity of his message. And because it's also swinging the other way right now with guys who are really guys and girls who are coming from a really authentic and more roots-based, traditional kind of country
absolutely.
music.
And I think that's really cool because I think that's got because my background is definitely rock music, and that kind of more roots-based, like you said, feels more rock, like a different type of rock. But so I think that's been great for just artists like myself that kind of have that. That kind of have a background in something different. And what I started in was rock music, and so it's definitely helped. It's been the right time for it, I think, to come in. And you're right, kind of, taking inventory of yourself and what's going on and what's coming next and all that. I think I don't know, like you said, if it's in every genre, but I think it's definitely for every, newer artist, for sure. You're definitely looking at everything coming in because you're like, it's part of you nervous. Do I get bumped out by the new stuff, or do I get bumped up by the new stuff? And it's just all... one day at a time.
I think it's interesting because there was, during the quote-unquote bro country era, the hip-hop and maybe the electronic side of production in some of the music, people either rubbed some people the wrong way, got people who were traditionalists. So a lot of the artists that I noticed, Nate Smith's an example of a guy that comes from a rock background and is kind of applying his trade in country music with a pure love of country. It's much more, I think, immediately acceptable, or has been more embraced by traditionalists in country music. It's because I think the basics of it are closer to what the basics of traditional country music were. So not that far away. Southern rock, folk music, the kind of the parameters are similar.
For sure. And it's just funny how, I mean, to me, and I say this in a lot of live shows too, that I started in rock, and I've got songs that when they came out were like, oh, this is like a rock country. And I think the genres are all kind of gray areas anyways, where somebody says, oh, country's not the same as it used to be, but nothing is the same.
That's
rock.
Right.
The rock number one now is very different than the rock number one 20 years ago. The hip-hop number one versus 20 years ago, they're all changing and all evolving. So, and I think it's only like a matter of time, before they kind of cross over each other, because obviously country now might sound like rock sounded, in the 90s, or some of it does. And so I think eventually you can't help but have that crossover. So,
what was the rock stuff that you loved growing up?
Foo Fighters, Nirvana. I covered a lot of...
Nate Smith covered Heart-Shaped Box, I think.
He did, yeah. And so when my first bands ever was rock cover bands.
Yeah.
And I covered, Chevelle, Tool.
You covered Tool?
Yeah. Years ago, yeah.
Wow. You got chops.
It was fun, covering stuff like that, and some of the, really throwing down, 30 Seconds to Mars.
Yeah.
Things
so you're messing with time signatures and stuff.
No, for sure. Yeah. Well, I wasn't. The guys. Back then, all I did was sing. I didn't touch a guitar hardly. But yeah.
You got to be able to count. You got to know when to come in.
Yeah.
When Maynard's coming in, you got to know.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Did you, when you were in those bands, was this like a high school thing? High school bands, garage bands, basement
right
bands?
After high school. My first bands ever, I was 18, 19 years old. And kind of did that for a few years doing the rock covers, but I would also do acoustic shows where I was by myself. In the rock band, I would just sing, and then I would do acoustic shows where I was by myself, and the music would be fairly different. Like I would play country music, or I would play softer stuff like The Script or Goo Goo Dolls. Like we play live shows now, we'll cover some Goo Goo Dolls, but it'll be like a heavier version or stuff that I'm used to playing, and we'll cover Coldplay sometimes, and it'll be a slightly heavier version, and it's just kind of mix of what I'm used to playing and then what I would listen to, and so kind of combining those different types of inspiration.
I love it, man. I mean, when I hear Keith Urban, I know I keep dropping different names here, but you're reminding me of a lot of conversations I've had with different ones, like Keith Urban talking about he listens to everything before he puts a record together, whether it's a brand new band that's just come out from like Australia or like older stuff from the Zeppelin catalog or whatever. He's dropping everything in there.
I love it. Yeah, because I listen to. Everybody says they listen to everything. Yeah. And like, but do you really? Yeah. And so I try not to say everything because I rarely listen to like classical music, and it is kind of funny. I used to shoot pool in leagues, and sometimes I would put headphones in and listen to like either acoustic or a classical something just to drain everybody out because I didn't drink or anything, so everybody else is drunk and all that stuff during shooting billiards, and so I would listen to it in my headphones, But
so let me put a pin in there. I'm going to come back to that. No, let's just get into that right now. That's kind of cool. So like when you see athletes showing up before a football game or something like that, basketball game, they got headphones on, or I'm picturing poker when you're watching like the World Cup, World Poker Tour. Sometimes guys have headphones on because they want to drown stuff out a little bit. You were doing that in a bar at pool billiards tournaments?
Yeah. I used to play 9-ball leagues and stuff all the time, and
like making money for money.
No, just for trophies and competitions.
Okay.
And the next level would have been money.
Okay, but this was for the love of the game. I got you.
We were like one level shy of going to Vegas for nationals and stuff like that. Cool. My last year doing that. But I would listen to stuff, and I don't know why I went with stuff that didn't have lyrics, but that was all I could think of was like classical or something. And I think it's maybe like because some people try to have stuff play in while you're reading. It's like you can't take in words and read different words at the same time and really comprehend it. And maybe it's because I was trying to think, so I would listen to stuff without words.
I tell you what, not that this is the same thing, but I have headphones on for so much of my day, all day, that when I often listen to music outside of here, it's usually instrumental.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is. And I can't listen to music because I get things like your song or whatever stuck in my head, and there'll be lyrics going on and on. So in order to drown out, sometimes
it's because you love the music.
Yeah.
So if you listen to something with lyrics, you're going to be focused more on it and listen to it. So
that's exactly right.
Kind of have something that feels more background.
Go back to your the band though, the rock band and stuff for a sec. You made it all the way through. Like up until basically being an adult, out of high school without being in bands, and that's when you started to get into a band?
I learned.
Usually it happens earlier on. How did you miss the music thing for so long?
Well, I would play a little bit. I had a couple friends that taught me a couple of chords on guitar, but not much more than that through like sophomore to senior year kind of thing. And like I knew a handful of chords. I could play a couple like Matchbox 20 songs or something.
Okay.
John Mayer, basic, not his version of his songs, but like really basic versions. And but yeah, nothing beyond playing in the living room, 1 or 2 songs at a time, until I was 18, or maybe I just turned 19.
And what happened? Why was somebody like, you've got a good voice, we're going to take advantage?
Actually, coincidentally, just went over to a friend's house, or a guy that I had not seen in years. Like we kind of grew up together, but he left my school in like the 11th or 9th, 10th grade or so, and did homeschool. And so I'd not seen him. I happened to go over to his house, and he had a band, and this guy was like singing, and I would stand up, and they were just playing in their living room.
Yeah.
And I would stand up and sing a couple songs, and it just kind of evolved into me singing with them because we'd known each other our whole lives, and they just met this other guy that was singing. And so that's kind of how the first band started. And we just had a buddy of ours single wide trailer that he got from his parents at like 18.
Sweet.
And we were staying in there, and like literally one night we were practicing for our non-existent shows at the time, and I'm sitting behind the drum kit and I'm looking around. We were probably close to going to like Whataburger or Wendy's or something in the middle of the night. And I said, man, it'd be really cool if that wall wasn't there, because he didn't use the first bedroom. I was like, if that wall wasn't there, this room would be huge.
Yeah.
Just not. And like 2 hours later, we had that wall knocked down and the whole thing painted black.
That sounds perfect, man.
But yeah, I mean, it was fun because we would do a lot of practicing, very few shows kind of thing back then.
Those days, did you have any idea that you'd be like down the road a few years later sitting in Toronto talking to a country music station?
No idea. No idea. And it wasn't even that I thought I couldn't do it for a career. It was just a non-existent thought. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not even something I've ever thought about. I worked in the fire service starting a year or so after these first bands, and I thought I would do that forever. And then I had friends that kind of made a move to Nashville and were, successful with it at the time. And I won a contest that was like this small local American Idol style contest.
Yep.
And you won and I'm going to do air quotes here, but you won a Nashville recording session.
Yeah.
And so I went up to Nashville, and it was in a guy's garage, but it was still one of the nicest studios I've ever seen. But because he did, and I like to tell people this because I think this is interesting because all the types of jobs there are in music. If you're watching like NBC and it's telling you what's going to play Friday night, you're like, at 7 o'clock, it's Friends, and the music will be happy. And then it's like, then at 8 o'clock, it's CSI.
Yeah.
He made that changing music for ads like that. And we went and recorded acoustic. Like I just played. I was like, dude, just cut it on. I'll just play live acoustic. And we kind of did that in Nashville. It's the first time I'd ever been. And so I was like, I got to get closer and at least kind of feel what it's like. And it was not long after that, like literally within a few months, I was living in Nashville.
It bit you, huh?
Yeah, for sure. I at least wanted to be closer. And the fire service helped me do that. I moved up to work for a town just south of Nashville as a firefighter. And a couple years after that, or a year after that, I started kind of easing into the music industry.
And were the guys that you worked with, the guys and girls that you worked with at the fire service, were they supportive of this? Did they know what you were doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, they knew. But it was still like I get asked all the time, were you playing guitar and singing at the station? And I didn't really do that because if I was at the station, I kind of acted like I was never going to leave. I was still trying to promote and all this stuff. And if I was gone, I was acting like I was never going back kind of thing. So I think that was the best way to do it, to kind of help both grow and still have that plan B-ish kind of thing there. But they knew what it was, to the point where they were forming new teams. Like there was a search and rescue team that flew drones, and they wouldn't let me join that team. They're like, dude, we're not paying thousands of dollars for you to get these certifications for you to just leave. And so part of that, you're like, hey, you don't know that. But that was, I guess, faith that they had. They're like, we're not doing all this because you're going to be gone.
Have you done a video or anything like that yet? Or maybe there's a video in the works where you're going to like have the fire service there, use the fire. Like I think
back in 2020, we shot, when we were stuck in the house, we luckily had a brick wall in our house. And I put out a cover of a song called Brother by Need to Breathe. And that was kind of a song we had been covering as like a thank you to the fire service and the guys that worked shifts for me and allowed me to go play shows and things like that. And so I was like, we can't shoot this huge music video. We can't even leave the house. And I reached out to people and I was like, I know what it's like in the fire service to, have a weird sense of humor, because that's just kind of how you get through things, or joking, between runs and things like that. And I was like, if you have videos of that, send them in. And like, obviously there's a lot of stuff showing calls and lights flashing. It's like, I want to see the behind the scenes of you joking, nurses joking behind the desk and stuff in between serious incidents. And so we got a lot of clips sent in from police officers, firefighters, and everything. And we put these clips together with a shot of me that she shot standing in front of a brick wall in the house and kind of just playing and singing along to it. And that was like the anchor shot, and so it kind of looked like you're in the fire station.
Yeah.
But that was the first time we ever brought like the fire service into any.
That's cool, man. It's a nice tribute too, right?
Yeah.
Nice tribute to the world before. I talked to a lot of people, and I'm sure you've experienced it as well. How a lot of country artists have a background in sports and some sort of athletics or high level sports. Lots of. Are you an injured athlete?
I'm an injured non-athlete.
Are you?
I mean, I played sports. I played baseball a little bit on like developmental travel league kind of thing up till I was 19 or so.
No offers from the Angels or anything?
No, okay. Nothing like that. It's too short, I think.
I
didn't. I mean, I played everything because I was in a small town, so you could be on every team. I played baseball, football, basketball, golf. all the way up through high school.
I was going to say, I think there's probably like a parallel in the work ethic that it takes, because often, the discipline and the dedication and the dealing with adversity and overcoming things and whatever in sports transposes really nicely into the world of music. I think probably it's a similar thing with a background in firefighting and a background in that work. You have to be dedicated. You got to apply yourself. You got to work. You got to treat it seriously. Sure. There's a lot of fun to be had on a team, but you also have to deal with some hardships.
And I think it's also like a parallel of personality types, maybe, on someone that gets on stage and someone that has to go perform in a sport versus performing on a stage. I think there's similarities there as well.
So the genre itself, as a guy that grew up in rock and roll, what was it about it? What was about the country genre that you knew was a good fit for you?
Well, that's what I'd always listen to. Like my bands and all, we played rock, but if I got in the car and went home, I was listening to country on the way home.
Yeah.
Listened to a lot of Kenny Chesney and stuff like that at the time. Now, I still listen to the Foo Fighters and 30 Seconds to Mars and all that, but I listened to a lot of country, and my parents also sang and performed like locally.
Okay.
At
just for fun
parties, yeah, and
together.
Yeah, and they're both very good, and they would
family band.
Like,
is there like a history? Is that how they met? Music?
Yeah, but they would host more karaoke style, but that with backing tracks and all. But they do most of the singing. That's kind of how their stuff went. And then, they might play for a party, and they're singing until a couple hours in, everybody's drinking, asking if they can sing, kind of thing.
Did you, as a kid, grow up in a house with them doing this, and you're like, that's mom and dad, and that's what they do?
Yeah, I mean, they both worked in construction. My mom was maintenance, the only female on the maintenance team at International Paper, big paper mill.
Let's go.
And my dad, pipe fitter, welder, traveled, worked construction, but that was like their
release, their hobby, all of that.
Thing.
And they did it together. That's so nice.
Yeah, it was great. Like they did every level of it. They started with my dad, picking a flat top and just singing together, into cassettes.
Yeah.
With the music, the backing tracks, into CDs, into this big machine you buy with numbers on it. You type a code and it plays a song, into laptops. And they went through every level of backing tracks you can do.
Were they good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Must have been good.
They're very good, for sure. Their harmony together was awesome. My dad sounds like George Jones.
Yes, he does.
Kind of thing. My mom was definitely covered the chicks, and she would sing. But all the way to older stuff. My dad would even sing. I picked it up from him because I've done a karaoke go-to song of mine was "Kiss and Say Goodbye" by the Manhattans.
Yeah.
And my dad would sing that. He sounds like George Jones singing country, but then he would also sing the Manhattans. But that was kind of their thing, is singing all kinds of stuff.
They don't do it anymore?
They do, a little few and far between now. What would you say, holidays, they might do a 4th of July party with
You're come on, guys, for the old time. Yeah, do it. Let's go.
But they still do it.
So
my uncle does it the same thing as well, my mom's brother. So he still does it pretty actively.
How are they dealing with what's going on in your life?
They're very proud.
Yeah.
My mom is still a mom. She's like, do I need to call the record label and tell them this? I'm like, I think it'll be fine.
Really? Yeah. You got a soccer mom for a mom?
Absolutely.
What do they call that? Momager? Yeah.
Yeah. She probably would have loved to have been a momager, but she still says, one of these days I'm gonna get that motorhome running ready, and we'll just follow y'all on the road to every show. They love it.
That's the best, man. Yeah. That really is the best. That they were supportive of that stuff, and that you got to be careful when you're as parents out there. You got to be careful what you expose your kids to. The joy of music in the household. Look what it did. Look at the path it sent you down.
You definitely got to be careful. You might end up like me.
Oh, it's so good. As far as writing and stuff goes, I mean, your parents obviously were doing a bit of a different thing. They were telling stories through their voices.
Right.
But you're a songwriter as well. You remember the first song you wrote when the songwriting bug hit you?
Well, I do remember the first songs that I wrote, the first handful of them. I wrote one or two just sitting with an acoustic guitar when I was 19 or 20.
Yeah.
Or maybe 18. I was pretty young.
Love songs? About a girl?
Well, not nothing I've ever really written is I'm not this super true to life kind of thing. Okay. It's more of an empath kind of songwriter.
Yeah.
And, but it's just because to me it's storytelling. And so I wrote one or two when I was young, and then I wrote a handful for the rock bands. But by the time I'd moved to Nashville at 27 years old or something like 27, 28, I'd probably written 10 songs.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know the songwriting world as much, but I was like, I can try this, and I definitely didn't know the co-writing writing with someone else, you know. But my first year or so in town, I kind of wrote a couple more times and was trying to figure out, you know, what kind of writing I liked. And maybe a year and a half in, I'd put out my first song, Little Red Wine, that I'd written before I moved to town. And that's kind of what helped me get introduced to like my current management and all that. And they got me into my first like co-writes. And it kind of slowly snowballed from there to writing more and more and more.
And now you said empathetic writing. What draws your attention? What grabs your attention? What makes you? What inspires you to sit down with pen and paper?
To me, it's like I'll have these random ideas. I've said a lot of ideas to Marissa, and like it's like I had this idea for a song, and I'll tell her, and she'll be like, "You better write that down," kind of thing. But to me, what catches me more than anything is like play on words kind of stuff, and or just a word that can. Recently, I've been loving like one-word titles. Like just last week, I wrote a song called Evergreen. I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day, but I was like, that's a cool thing to look at like one word and decide what it can mean besides the obvious. And I'm definitely the type of person that I may not have all these things weighing on me. It's like I got to sit down and write about this therapeutically kind of thing.
You don't need to get that stuff out. You're not the I got to get this off my chest or I'm going to burst guy.
Yeah, to me, writing a song is solving the puzzle that day. Like you sit down with people, have titles, or I might sit down with myself or have stuff on my phone. And I'm like, what does this mean? Let's figure this out. And
that really sounds like a balance. It sounds like you got a good head on your shoulders and you're not tortured. Oh, it's so nice to meet an artist that isn't tortured. I mean, we get a lot of good music from the tortured artists who need to get something off their chest, but good. It's just somebody that is in it because they love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not because you need to do it.
Well, I feel like I probably still need to do it. Just in a different way.
Above the Water, you want to talk to me about that track specifically?
So, Above the Water, I mean, this one was really cool because I've went into a lot of meetings in the last year and listened to, we call them outside songs, just songs written by people besides me.
Yeah.
And I've written all but 2 or 3 songs that I've ever put out. But to me, it should be this in any genre, but especially like country music or just a storytelling genre. To me, the best song always wins. It doesn't matter who wrote it. And the biggest thing is I've listened to hundreds of songs, and I decide, you know, if I feel like an imposter singing a song, and if I feel like I can portray it the way that I want it to be portrayed. Because when somebody hears a song, it's going to mean what it's going to mean when they hear it to them. It's going to mean something different to you than it does to me if we hear a song. And so I listen to all these songs as a fan and decide. And Above the Water was in a meeting. We went around to different publishers, and I listened to Above the Water. And that was an immediate kind of, let's keep that one, let's listen. I met the songwriters. I was like, this is really cool. And it was cool because it feels like a religious song, and that's like the obvious takeaway that most people take. But when I listened to it, that's not how it hit me. Like, obviously the lyrics have it, but to me, I was listening to the verses, and to me, it's a song about, you know, struggling and knowing that it's okay to struggle and learning to recognize your struggles and that you don't have to fight them all the time, kind of thing. And but I sat with that song for a long time, and I actually reached out to the writers, and I was like, hey, is it okay if I would like to add some sort of bridge here, and made some tweaks. And so if you look it up, I'm listed as a songwriter, and I like kind of tell the behind the scenes of it. Like originally I was not, but I added stuff to it. I added the bridge by myself and things like that. And I don't do it to try to get credit and be a songwriter on the song, but I felt like it needed something to wrap up. But that one's been a really cool one to me, like ever since the beginning. I'm kind of rambling on it now, but it's kind of cool to think about it, and I'll process it all at one time and get it out. But I'm excited about it though, because I think it's cool. Like people oh, I love that you put a Christian song out, and that's not immediately what it was to me, you know. But I think a song is whatever you need it to be when you hear it.
Hope, right? A lot of hope in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope in the music. Yeah. If somebody was, if I was trying to explain you to somebody for the first time, what song would you suggest that they dig into?
What song? Ooh.
Like what's your calling card right now?
That is a tough one. It's ever evolving. Like this year especially, like the new songs that we've got coming, I would probably say listen to anything released this year.
Yeah.
And just so you're caught up. Because if you listen to like my first song, you'll see something that built me, but maybe not necessarily what I am now.
Yeah.
And so that's a very hard question. It would probably be something that nobody's ever heard. I bet. Listen to what we wrote 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's the artist recency bias thing, though, right?
There is that's real for sure.
Yeah,
because we've got dozens of songs, so we're putting an album out next year. We don't know exactly when just yet, but we've got it narrowed down to way more songs than will fit on the one album.
As it happens,
and I'll write a song and be like, hey, should this go on the list? And like, well, let's live with it for a couple more weeks. You don't want it to just recency bias, knock off a song you've loved for 3 years kind of thing. And that's a really cool thing. But, I mean, you ask what song would I show somebody to show them who I am. Yeah. And I think it takes a recent song because you're ever evolving as a songwriter and as an artist. And
who you are
show
now,
you something
right.
old, then, like I said, it may be a building block, but it may not be exactly who I am now.
It's cool, man. You really painted a picture when you described that room that you were in at your friend who was being homeschooled. I mean, just think about the parents. First of all, they're homeschooling their kid, and they're letting them have a band in the living room. Those are the coolest parents ever, by the way.
Right,
so shout out to them. Yeah. They really affected your career, man, your life. They affected your life by letting you come over and hang out with this kid who's getting homeschooled. He's probably supposed to be doing math or something like that.
Well, by the first time we hung out, we were both graduated.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It was right after high school.
So they did it all right.
They did,
and then they opened the doors to you, and I'm sure they'll be on a guest list of yours down the road.
By the way, now he's a very, very successful real estate agent. that guy.
So he's doing okay? Homeschooling works?
Absolutely.
Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Worked for him and for you. Tyler Braden, thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
And we'll be following the recency bias in effect.